Boy, I've been looking forward to releasing this one for a while. On this episode, we sit down with the highly animated and always a pleasure to talk to Mr. John Molnar. We sit back and talk about the Southern Classic Open. We talk about judging, how he got into it, and we kind of start diving into some things. We actually ended up talking a little over for 2 hours, so this is broken into a two-part series with Mr. J-Mo. And I hope y'all enjoy it just as much as I did and sit back and talking to him. So y'all sit back, enjoy, and here we go, guys. Welcome, everybody, to the Hound's Tales podcast. This is your home for field trialing and deer dog hunting. It'll be stories and discussions on the world of dog hunting. So let's drop the gate, cast your hounds, and get ready for another episode of the Hound's Tales podcast. Welcome, everybody, to the Hound's Tales podcast. Tonight, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. John Molnar. How you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing all right, buddy. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You've had a pretty good little end of your year here lately. We'll get into that a little bit later, but we really had a good time down there at the Southern Classic Open at Pools, and got some good memories and stories off of that one. So that was always a good one. So let's kind of get into it real quick. You know, we're going to talk about a lot of things here, mainly centered around the judging side of things. If anybody knows John, y'all know that he probably puts in more time than just about anybody that's out there that still actually has a working job. So as far as that, it goes out there and judges and puts in the work on that side of the field, he really does a good job. So we kind of talked the other day and decided it was a good idea to get him on and talk about some things. So J-Mo, how long have you been a houndsman, and you know what kind of got you into it?
Well, my grandfather, everybody knows him, most everybody, Pawpaw. He had dogs most of his life, and once he got older, and really once I was born, once his pack kind of died out, he quit, and we always hunted with the dog hunting club, the same one we hunt with to this day, Angola Lodge in Cumberland County, Farmville, Virginia. But we were always the standards, you know. The club always had dogs. We always helped take care of the dogs and stuff like that. It was just something I always wanted to get into. Mm-hmm. But one of my, it's kind of a story I was going to tell. One of my grandmother's rules was there weren't going to be any more dogs at her house. So she just, you know, she was totally for dog hunting. She just didn't want the dogs in her backyard. She was tired. Well, they don't exactly they live in the city of Charlottesville, and it's not a spot for it. But yeah, it was, since he lived up there though, we always drove. He used to live in Farmville back in the day, and we drove a long ways. He probably still drives. It's over 70 miles one way to the hunt club.
Wow.
But you know, down there compared to where he lives, you can't really do that. Yeah. I live in Kent Store, Virginia, which is probably, we're probably 30 miles east of him, but it's more rural here. You can run dogs here a little bit. It's still not quite like it is down there in Cumberland.
Right.
And I always had a love for dogs at a young age, and really who was my idols growing up, I guess you could say. One was one of the local farmers down there. He was the only guy in our hunt club that really had foxhounds, you know. Okay. Everybody had eagles or some kind of mixed up bred something, but he always had foxhounds, and they were always, you know, they pushed them on through there and stuff. But who really I looked up and still do to this day was probably Kevin Meadows. A lot of people, Big Country, a lot of people get their jackets made from him.
Yeah.
He started the Southern Cumberland outside speed and drive, which was a big outside hunt that was between his hunt club and my hunt club. We had a pile of land. I mean, who knows how much land there probably was we had permission on right there. I mean, easily 10,000 acres. And, you know, it was a huge hunt. It was one of the bigger hunts back then when they had the Buckingham. This was kind of before the series and all that, but
right.
It was a real big hunt. And he kind of is who got me into the field trialing aspect of it. You know, he was always, deer season was ending and everybody was going their ways, but Kevin was just getting ready. You know, field trialing season was just getting ready to start.
Right.
And I always wanted, that's why I kind of got into it. I always wanted to keep going. So once we ended up with our own dogs, that's kind of how it worked out.
Gotcha. Yeah, I see. I don't think I ever realized that he started that series and had that big of an impact on it.
Well, he didn't really start the series. It was before the series, but
gotcha.
That hunt, the Southern Cumberland, was a huge hunt. I mean, back in the day, we'd go to some of those outside hunts, and it'd be 150, 200 dogs. The Southern Cumberland would be 300 plus every time.
Right.
Always.
That's awesome.
That was a good hunt.
That's awesome. So it was a little bit between, you know, your grandpa really kind of the one that got you into it, but it took, you know, him and others that kind of got you into the field trialing side. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Glenn Spradlin, a lot of people called him Bulldog. I actually met him one night because we had the registration for that hunt at our hunt club, and it was in March or February, something like that. And I had went down there the night before and stayed the night, and I heard something outside, and I looked outside, and there was this man out there with a dog box. I was probably 20, 21 years old, still didn't own a dog, had never owned a dog in my life.
Right.
And he was out there. It was the night before the hunt, and I was like, damn, this guy got here early. I went out there, and it was Glenn Spradlin. I knew of him, but he didn't have a clue who I was.
Right.
And, he probably had 15 dogs in the cab high, and he was trying to get him to lay down, and I showed him that we had some dog pens over there, so we backed the truck over there, put the dogs in the dog pens, and he was going to sleep in his truck. I was like, nah, man, come on inside. And I remember he had a bottle of Old Forester, and anybody that knew Glenn, he always carried around with him was a bottle of Old Forester if he drank.
Right.
Now, this was when he older. He didn't always drink, but if he did, that's what it was. And we went in there and we got to talking and kicking it off or whatever. And I told him that what had happened was, you know, like I said before, my grandmother said no dogs would ever live at her house before. Well, this would have been February or March of 2012. Well,
right.
5 months before that, September of 2011, my grandmother passed away.
Oh, wow. Sorry to hear that.
And emphysema and COPD.
Yeah.
And I guess, I mean, I've heard you say it 100 times in the podcast, and everybody knows it. Dogs were always in my grandfather's blood, and he wanted to get back into it.
Right.
And we went through that deer season, and he said, let's get some dogs. So I told Glenn that night, the night before our hunt, I said, we're talking about getting some dogs. You know, we were down there in Cumberland, but Glenn lived up there in Albemarle County too. Glenn was probably one of the biggest fox hunters in Albemarle County, especially then, you know.
Right.
And or field trialers, you know, he deer hunted, fox hunted, coon hunted. He was just a dog man, all around dog. And he said, son, he said, you come on. He said, you and your grandpa come over there Sunday. He said, I'll hook you up. So we went on. We had a good time that night. The next day we had the field trial, and Glenn ended up placing, I think he placed 3 or 4 dogs that day. He didn't win the hunt. I don't even know if he had anything in the top 5, but he placed 3 or 4 dogs.
Right.
Well, I talked to Papa, and Papa said, that's fine. Let's go over there. Let's see what he's got. So we went over there, and we pulled up, and Glenn, I called him on the phone, and we went over there to his dog pens in Woodridge, and he took an old piece of pipe or something, he tapped on top of one of the houses, and all the dogs came out. Well, see, this was back before jackets or anything like that. All the dogs were painted.
Right.
Well, I had a little piece of paper in my pocket, and Glenn looked over there and saw me, and what I had the numbers wrote down of the dogs that he had placed.
No kidding.
You know, if we were going to buy some dogs, I was going to buy the ones that I knew were good.
Right.
Glenn looked over. He knew exactly what I was doing. He said, John boy, he said, I think you and me are going to get along we're going to get along just good. It was exactly something that he would have done.
Right,
And I didn't even realize what he had done back then, but he had told me that night before, because these hunts were always on Saturdays.
Right.
And this was in February, March. What he had done is he had went to the West Hanover or Northern Virginia, one of them outside 3 days, and ran these dogs in the Derby on Thursday and Friday.
Okay.
Well, he placed a couple of them. I think some of them didn't. He came home, got them numbers off of them, painted them again, and brought them to our hunt on Saturday. It was day 3 for them dogs.
No.
with shit they were still doing. He placed 4 or 5 of them. They were just as good as anybody's fresh dogs they brought there.
And I've heard a lot of people always talk, if you're going to do these outside hunts, it's a good idea to kind of give them a good little sprint, like maybe 2 or 3 days before the hunt.
Oh, yeah, man. When we first got into it, Glenn was always real good at it. Always. But, man, Troy Jamerson, Buckingham, Dillwyn.
Yeah.
He'd always run his dogs about Wednesday or Thursday, and, man, come Saturday, we'd be clapping for him all day.
Right. Right.
A lot of guys did that. So, it's all in theory. Some say it's a lot of luck, but I always said it was luck. And the more and more I got into those field trials, outside hunts, don't take me wrong, it does take a bit of luck, especially on the outside.
Right.
There's a little bit more to it, too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, that's anything.
Beach Billy said it in his podcast. When the same dog's doing it, it's more than just luck.
That's
right. What I'm saying?
That's
when the same man's doing it, I mean,
yeah.
Those guys had a passion for the outside hunts, and they were very good at it. And many of them were good at the pen hunts, too. But back then, I didn't even really know what a pen was. And my grandfather, he knew what a fox pen was. But I can tell you one thing. That was a no, you did not put dogs in no fox preserve. And it was not, I don't know. It's crazy. It's stories, too, behind that. I mean, as we got into it, we field trialed, and Pawpaw got Glenn Spradlin. One of the main reasons he meant so much to me is because he was always good as gold to my grandfather.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Tuesday night, Wednesday night, it didn't matter. If they went somewhere, Glenn was there. They'd go to the fox pen. Well, later on they'd go, but everywhere they always went hunting together. And Glenn always went to those outside 3 days.
Right.
Well, I told Pawpaw, I was like, I'm going to get you some dogs in shape, and you go to the outside 3-day.
Right.
With Glenn. It was the new Central. It was
okay.
Later. Yeah, it was that same year, but it was later in the year. It was August. We had bought the dogs from Glenn,
Right.
We might as well go with Glenn. So I got the dogs ready. Well, what I was doing was I was going with Glenn over to Gary Verlin's fox pen and getting the dogs ready. He was running them in the pen. Well, I was up there every night. Every week you'd sit up there on Gary's porch, because Gary's house is inside his fox pen. I don't know if you've ever been there before.
Haven't yet.
But you pull in one gate, and there's Gary's house in the kennels. His grandson lives there now, Noah.
Yeah.
But then you pull through another gate, and that's where the fox pen is. Well, we'd turn loose, and we'd go up there to the house, or Gary would come down there to the little shack in the pen. You just sit there and talk to him all night, and that man had stories. He'd been all over the United States running fox dogs, and I just thought this man knew. I could sit there and listen to him talk all night long.
Yeah.
Well, I became to know the man. Well, the funny story is, a couple months went by. Pawpaw didn't know where I was running them dogs. He didn't pay no attention, but he surely knew I wasn't running them in no fox pen, because that was no. Well, August came around, or whenever the hunt, it was the new Central. I remember it. I guess that would be in August, and they went on over there. Well, I had a job, and them hunts are Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I couldn't take off.
Yeah.
So they go over there or whatever, and Glenn introduces Pawpaw the first day to Gary Verlin. And, he tells him his last name, and our last name's Molnar. Well, there ain't but a couple, how many have you ever met?
Right, exactly. Very much.
He said, you got to be, Gary, he's a wise man. I mean, even in his older age, he was smart as a tack. He said, you must be related to John Molnar.
Oh, no.
And Pawpaw said, yes, sir. And he said, how do you know, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, John's been over there every week running his dogs in the fox preserve. Oh, Lord. That started, man, you want to talk about bad. I was at work, got a phone call right then.
I bet Pawpaw had a conniption fit.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't pretty. But even then, I remember out there at those outside hunts, I mean, that's where I met people like Rodney and Tyler Sipe and, Ronnie Reiner and, all them. I mean, it's crazy how even still to this day, it's two groups,
Right.
I mean, there's very few people that do both outside and inside hunts.
Yeah.
And, and there's so much respect for both groups. Everybody loves everybody in this sport, and that's what I like about it. But it's cool. And the judging aspect of it really got me to see that. You know what I'm saying? It's really crazy. Like I was judging, I guess, the West Hanover or something this year, and went and judged it on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then it's 300 plus dogs there. And then I go literally 6 days later and judge like the Southeastern or something at pools for 3 days. It's 350 different dogs there, and it's different handlers,
Yep.
it's crazy how popular this sport is, and people really don't realize it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% correct. You know, I don't really mess a lot with the outside stuff, but I'd love to be able to go judge one and just to be able to see, like you said, the different caliber dogs. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's got to be a completely different caliber dog to compete well on the outside.
It really is, man. You see, you know, I mean, those places, especially sometimes like the New Central, where they cast at the New Central, they cast off a state road, and back there it's all these four-wheeler paths. It looks like a fox pen almost. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You don't see dogs running up and down the road.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, you know, like say a dog does come by you down the path, and there is a dog running 3/4 of a mile through the woods. That dog takes a left and harks to him through the woods like it's 200 yards away. You know what I'm saying?
Like it's supposed to.
In the fox pen, they're not doing that. In the fox pen, 90% of your dogs are going to stand there, and they might go to him once they get 50, 100 yards to him. But what they really are trying to do is wait till the game hits the road, and then they're just going to either try to catch it right there, or just dive in behind it.
Right. Yeah. Like you said, it's just completely different, and that's. I wish Virginia would open back up on and allow us to have some, you know, off training season and stuff like that. But like, man, like and that was a conversation me and my dad had when I first started getting into the pens. Like you said, like with your pawpaw, you know, my dad hated the idea of a pen. When I told him I wanted to start getting into the pen world and learning all this, he was like, "You're going to destroy every dog that you have." And I tell you what, the deer dogs that I had, he was 100% correct. I mean, now, a lot of people, y'all listening, don't shoot me for saying that. But I promise you, I started running some of my deer dogs that, you know, this is before I knew better. I started running some of my deer dogs in the pen, and they started picking up roadie habits, and I pulled them immediately.
That's another great thing about deer hunting is, you know, I've brought up this topic before on Facebook, and it's you know, it's all in how you want to deer hunt. You got people out here that like taking 15, 20 dogs and backing up and casting them in a block. And then you got people that like to take 2, 3, 4 dogs and walk them around. And you know, depending on how you deer hunt, the fox pen it could affect you, or it couldn't. Sometimes it does, but it all really comes down to what you want to do. And you know, old man told me years ago, because when we got into the fox pen, because what's funny about Pawpaw used to not wanting me, if I called my grandfather right now at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night and told him, or what is it, Tuesday, told him I was going to go run the outside, like tomorrow night for the pleasure, you know, like going deer hunting tomorrow is one thing. But to go like pleasure running on the outside, he would freak out. He'd be like, boy, as many fox pens as you can get in. You know, it's changed, and you know, but I think I'm still a firm believer that it's a lot to do with the breed. I'm a firm believer. I mean, you see a lot of these guys that get hunting scores a lot at the fox pens or anything. I mean, some of them do run on the outside, some of them don't. I'm a firm believer you can't necessarily train that form. You know, I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong. You had Steve Murphy on here, and he said he went back numerous times, and I'm going to go back and say it numerous times tonight. Everything I'm saying is an opinion of mine, you know, but I just feel like it's mostly all goes back to the breed. You know, I have a breed that I like going back to, and majority of my dogs do go back to 2 major dogs. Mm-hmm. And I like it, and that's what I like hunting. Somebody might not like it. Somebody might like something close to it. Right. But that's another thing that makes this sport so cool. And the cool thing about it is, going back to the judging aspect of it, is judging, you get to see everything. You get to see everything, you know, and you know, you make mental notes, you take jolly notes, you take notes, and then at the end of the hunt, you see the results, and you're like, well, I saw that dog doing this, and I like that. Yep. And then you're like, well, I saw this dog, and he finished second, and I didn't like him at all. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But his owner might think he's the greatest thing in the world, and he's doing good for him, so that's good for him. But it's all in what you like.
Yep. And I mean, it's 100% true. You know, like, and I'm not going to name the hunt or the dog or anything like that, but there was a dog that I judged a 3-day this year, and I watched that dog. He won the Derby class. That dog, I never saw him higher than like 6th or 5th in a crossing. And I scored the dog multiple times. But he was always the first Derby dog.
Oh, yeah.
That's how he got racked up. And that's a whole nother.
And see, a lot of people that don't judge, and a lot of people don't even realize how that works.
Right.
A lot of people don't realize how running together scored separately even works.
Yep.
And I'll be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, the Derby dog that wins at Billy Pools, that's exactly what happens right there.
Yep.
Exactly what happens. It's all about getting scored. And I learned that this year. That was one of my biggest things. They changed the East Coast Masters this year to Tar River.
Right.
At Tar River. It's always been at Tar River. They changed it to a 1-class hunt.
Yes.
And I rode down there 2 days. We stayed one night, and I rode down there with Colby Taylor. And Colby Taylor made a comment, and I thought about it, and he's exactly right. He was like, in a 2-class hunt, you just got to score points.
Right.
But a 1-class hunt, you got to be there.
You got to be there.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like especially say the 2-day Derby this year at Billy Pools. I thought back to that, and I was like, you're exactly right. Like Pools and Creedmoor, they're 2 totally different aspects of the sport. But even more so at Pools, maybe they're getting a bigger pack. Well, if you're running further back and then 5th, 6th in that big pack, you're not going to make it.
Right.
Where in a 2-class hunt, you might spread it out a little bit more, even as a judge. If you can get 10, give them 10,
Yep.
Well, hell, I've scored it many times where it's 7, 8, 9 all-age dogs, and then 2 Derby dogs right there. Boom. One of them was 5th and one of them was 9th.
Right.
One of them got 1st place crossing, the other one got 2nd place crossing.
Yep. And that's a rabbit hole we could go down.
It is. And that's just how that's how it was set up. But really, that's the only way you could set it up. I've thought about it. Like, how else would you do it?
Right.
And those guys that came up with these rules years and years ago, it's amazing how good of a set of rules they really came up with.
Yes.
In my opinion, because I'm sure some things have been changed over the years, but really not much.
Right.
And I know we're going to talk about that later on.
Yeah. Right.
The rules in general, it's amazing what those guys did. And it's amazing. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's cool. I love the history of this sport. Yes. The history of this sport is amazing. Right. And a lot of people don't realize, everybody knows, everybody's heard the brag, George Washington had foxhounds.
Right.
But it's a whole lot of history behind it. It's a whole lot of history.
Yeah. You're skipping hundreds of years.
Oh, yeah. Especially in the state of Virginia.
Yeah.
There's a lot of history right here in the state of Virginia with the sport.
Yep. And I'm praying to the good Lord every day that we don't lose it. I'm praying we don't lose it. But let's take a step back real quick. Let's talk about the Southern Classic Open. You had the dream hunt.
Yeah.
Man, I was there. I was killed right beside you. That was a hunt. I didn't do nothing that hunt. I got my doors blown off that hunt. But it will go down as a hunt that I will always remember. Strictly from being just kenneled beside you and being able to watch that whole thing unfold, man. That was incredible. So for those listening that don't know, why don't you give them a kind of a brief little overview of how your weekend went?
Well, yeah, at first, anybody that knows me knows I don't go to too many of those 3 days. I'm going to get to that later too, but if I go to one, I'm normally there a day, 2 days early. Mm-hmm. And I had started a big project at work. We bury. I'm a manager over some drill crews for a directional boring company, and we bury fiber optic. And I had took a big job with a time on it, and when I took the job with the time on it, I was really just trying to show off at work, and like, me and my guys can do it.
Right.
I had confidence in them. There was no time.
Right.
Well, then it got closer and closer to the deadline. I looked at the deadline, and the deadline was the day before the Southern Classic. I was like, man. Or no, I guess it would have been the Friday of the Southern Classic. And I was like, man, I don't even know if I'm going to get this thing finished on time. But really, I need to get it finished a day or two in advance.
Right.
Well, we got to working, and man, we got the best guys ever at work. And they ended up getting it done the Thursday before the hunt, about halfway through. And I was like, man, I've been telling some boys, I was like, I'm not going, I'm coming, I'm not going, I'm coming.
Right.
Because I always like getting down there. I hate feeling rushed.
Yeah.
Came home. I had to paint all my dogs. I ended up calling Noah Verlin, Gary's grandson, a real good friend of mine.
Yeah.
He was down there already.
Yep.
And he went in there and registered my dogs for me.
Right.
And I said, I'm going to come on down there. Well, then I got to talking to Emily, my girlfriend. I was like, no, I'm not going to go. I'm going to go. Well, then she was like, you either need to go now or not go. So I ended up staying at the house.
Right.
And got up and went down there, and I ended up oversleep. I got there like 30, 45 minutes before roll call. It was just one of those weekends where it was like, there's no way anything's going to go right.
Right.
No, there's no way. I'm running late. I'm doing everything. I done forgot this. I done forgot that.
Just thought it set the tone for the whole weekend.
Yeah. I forgot my acetone, but you were there, and you helped, of course. I remember you said it down there, and it's crazy. Every single person showed up that weekend to win.
Yep.
But every single person also showed up more than willing to help anybody with anything.
Yep.
And that's another one of the greatest things about this sport, where it's so competitive, but everybody wants everybody to do good.
That's right.
I mean, I'm not going to say that because there are probably some haters out there, and everybody's got to have it. But
right,
it's a mass majority. You know what I'm saying? Like I've never walked up and asked somebody if I could borrow something or use something. They looked at me and said no.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. Yep.
And I mean, the picture, my profile picture on Facebook shows that. I mean, all those people that was fun. But I mean, it was crazy. I mean, I remember the first day, I think he was 10th hunting. He had speed. He was 12th or 13th speed.
Right.
He was about 10th, 12th, 14th HGA.
Yeah.
And I called Emily texted me, asked me how I was doing. I was like, really, we're sitting about perfect. I said, we're right there where we want to be. I said, I don't want to be way up there because I've been last year I was leading the East Coast Classic going out.
Yeah. And
I was just a nervous wreck and bam. It didn't ever work.
Right.
So then day 2 came around and I made it a note to myself. Since I judged so much this year, I looked at what people did. And I always, whenever I go to a hunt, I like to do roll call.
Yeah.
And it's not to care. There's no way I can't remember dog numbers or anything like that.
I can't either.
I like to see what people do.
Right.
And every single person, like being kenneled up there, like what you were talking about, every single person does something different.
Yep.
Or maybe they do the same variety of things just in a different order.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But it's crazy to look at how different it does, but everybody has the same outcome. Everybody wants the same idea. Well, the second day I made it a pact. I made it a rule. When I went down there, I said, if you're going to go, I said, you're going to put in the time. I said, I went down there to the Tidewater and I had a great time and I ended up just partying the whole weekend, was down there for a good time.
Right.
I said, it takes more than that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You go to a one day, you just throw a dog in there, you have a good day, blah, blah, blah. Everybody parties, have a good oh, well, let's see who won.
Yep.
A 3-day, you got to work on them dogs. It takes effort. It takes way more than just showing up.
Right.
And I told myself, I said, rule number 1, John, I said, you're going to be the first person to those kennels every day. I said, you're going to be the first one. I said, nobody's going to beat you there to work on them dogs. I said, nobody. I said, and if you need to be, you're going to be the last ones there. And I remember the day 2, I showed up and there was 3 or 4 people already at the kennels. And I was like, damn, I made a mental note of what time it was.
Right.
I said, if we can make it through today, I said, I'm going to be here an hour earlier tomorrow.
No.
Well, day 2 went around and day 2, it felt good. It wasn't running that good. It was horrible weather.
Yep. Some of the driest conditions I've ever seen.
It went all the way through November, almost all the way. We never got rain until the second week of deer season.
Yep.
And I was glad because I've judged enough hunts down there. I know if it's good conditions, it can be a racetrack. It can be all you want running. But when it's not, it's going to take a different dog. Well, I took a different type of dog down there, and I literally said it after day 1. He was my highest scoring dog. I said, good thing I brought Boss Man. I said, this is going to be his style hunt, I believe.
Yep.
Well, day 2, I went in there, and my good buddy Cody Hawkins called him that day. And I was freaking out because he always likes to get his number off. Well, as soon as you get him up off the ground, he tries to get his number off.
Right.
And Cody texted me, said he had him. I was like, oh, my God, I need to get with you. I need to get his jacket on him, blah, blah, blah. Cody was like, man, this ain't my first rodeo. He's got a jacket on him,
No.
And I was like, thanks, man. Well, we went up there, and I think I was maybe feeding dogs or messing with some dogs or whatever, and I had him on the table.
Uh-huh.
and I had taken his jacket off, or whatever, and I think it was Todd Miller walked over, and he looked at me, and he was like, just gave me this look, and I was like, what's up? And he was like, you seen the scores? I was like, nah. He was like, you're leading. I was like, oh God. And I looked up, and it was kind of like, I knew we'd been kenneled next to each other, and I was like, how do you know it's my dog? Because it's national. It's not like it's GTP. It doesn't show it. He's like, with that dog, John, and I've got him on the bench, you know what I'm saying, working on him. And I was like, well, what the hell? So I put him back up, and I walked up there, and I seen where he got a trailing score. I said, oh, man. And that's the ultimate.
Yep.
This sport has gone so many different ways, and I've seen it. I've only been doing it maybe 10 years, 12 years, but I've seen it go so many different ways. But I still, go back to Glenn Spradlin, Gary Verlin, them guys, the whole reason Gary Verlin ever built the fox pen was to get away from the upbringing of Lake Anna and out there. He loved running on the outside. Right. You would see him run a few 3 days in the pen, but that man ran them outside 3 days. That's what he loved. And he got tired of the, it was just, the place was growing up, Lake Anna was becoming a big place. So, and he built that fox pen for that. But them guys loved a true foxhound that would get in the woods. And, when you caught him up, the first thing Glenn was going to do is look at his ears. You know what I'm saying? Glenn didn't care how he ran. He wanted to make sure that thing was in the woods. And I always wanted that type of hound. And my dogs, that Boston dog goes back to my Ironman dog. Well, that Ironman dog is off of a dog called Hoover's Tiny Man. And Glenn's girlfriend, they ended up getting married. His wife, her name was Christy Hoover. And Christy, and that was her dog. They had bought it from Kevin Meadows, who it all goes back.
Yeah, it all goes back.
Why, that's why I have that breed. Right. And I always believed in that, and I knew he was that type of dog. But to get a trailing score, you're like, oh man, well, then for it to be on the second day, I was like, what do I do? Do I do this? I need to get this. I need to get that. Yep. And look, I was kenneled by everybody, but I was kenneled with my good buddy Travis Walmsley, rock solid kennel. And Travis has been doing this longer. Travis he's been doing this way longer than me. He's been kenneled up with some of the group, some very good houndsmen. Travis himself is a dog man. Right. And he said, don't change a thing. Mm-hmm. He said, whatever you did the last 2 days worked. He said, do not change a thing.
I remember telling you the exact same thing. Do not change what you did.
But you still got that thought in your head, like, well, maybe I should do this. Well, the only thing I did change was I got there a little earlier, and I was the first man day 3. And I made sure, and I got him up, and I was like, man, this dog can't walk. His ears were tore up, his chest was tore up. He had gotten them briars, and them briars are thick in there, and they wear a dog down. Yep. And, a lot of people think the running and all that is what tears the dogs are conditioned for the running. The running, it can scream all weekend long. They're conditioned for that. Yeah. It's the ones to go in there. And I'll get back to that too, because we'll just kind of skip forward in the story. When I got home, comparing him to the other dogs I had that had finished the hunt, but they didn't win the hunt. They didn't even place in the hunt. Right. Just looking at them compared to him, you could tell how much more energy he exerted that weekend. Yep. You could tell that it took him longer to bounce back. It took him longer. He didn't run no longer than they did. He didn't run an extra day, but in those 3 days, he exerted so much more energy than those other 2 dogs did.
He wanted it more that weekend.
You're exactly right. He did. Now, was that more his style hunting? I believe so. I really do. I believe it was more his style, where them other dogs were, maybe waiting a little bit for him to jump that fox, but.
That's a whole other rabbit hole too, man. That's like, a lot of people don't realize, like, that dog style hunting, like some of the guys listening that may not understand that. It's like, not every dog, like my razor dog, you couldn't have asked for a better hunt for him than the Tidewater. That's why he finished second. Yep. Just like your dog from this hunt you're talking about. You couldn't have asked for a more better hunt. That's the kind of things, that, to me, that's the quote-unquote luck side that you need.
And the thing that sucks about it is because the one thing I put in my Facebook post, because at the end of the weekend, he did finish top 20 speed and drive. And that's what got him the endurance. Right. And what I wanted people, hunting trailing dog, damn, another hunting trailing dog wins at pools. This dog ain't just a hunting trailing dog. Right. You know what I'm saying? I've placed him speed and drives inside and outside. Yeah. He's an all around He's an all-around dog, just like his daddy was.
Yeah, I remember having that conversation with you here recently. That you were talking about that.
Yeah, he's just a dog. I mean, I'll probably, sadly but truly, I'll probably never deer hunt him a day again in his life. But that's what made me fall in love with his daddy, was how much of a deer hound he was. And I could run his daddy in a fox pen from January until November 15th, and come November 18th, me and him go deer hunting, and he knew what time it was.
No.
And we go deer hunting. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And it just very smart dog. And the other half of my dogs, they either go back to my Ironman dog or they go back to Spears Mountain Sergeant. And that's what I like about every Gyp I've ever bred to Ironman, every dog I've ever had off Spears Mountain Sergeant. They've been smart. And
Yep.
if you're smart, if they're smart, I feel like I can do something with them.
Right.
Like everybody says, you need to be smarter than the tool you work with. I don't know. I think the dog needs to be smarter than me to a certain extent. Like, like if the dog ain't smarter than me, we don't have a chance, because we're not going to make it very far.
Right.
But I think the judging too, I think it goes back to it. You know, all this stuff I'm saying, and a lot of it's just stuff I've heard people say. You know what I'm saying? A lot of it's just stuff that I heard that guy say, or I heard that guy say. Well, damn, that guy that just said it's made 12 field champions. You know, he probably knows what he's talking about.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You know, I mean, and but back to the day two, that trailing score. I mean, I went that night and I was like, well, first thing I wanted to do was get drunk. I was like, my nerves are shot. I don't know. I was like, well, no, I can't get drunk, because then I'm going to oversleep tomorrow. And then, you know what I'm saying? Then I'm going to have to FA my dog, you know, so then blah, blah, blah. I woke up the next morning. I got there. I was the first ones there. I turned on the lights up there. He was sore. I mean, he was sore. And I got him up and I started walking him I bet I walked him 15 times that day, that morning. Well, by the time I got him walking right there before cast, he was pulling me.
No.
And, you know, it's kind of funny, because I remember another guy I look up to in a lot in this sport, Bobby Newman. He told me, he said, one of the weirdest things you'll ever feel is leading going out day 3. I was like, how's that? And he was like, you walk through, and he was like, you cast. He was like, and every single person standing around, he's going to walk up to you and tell you good luck. He was like, but you know that don't mean it.
Yep.
and damn if he wasn't true, you know what I'm saying? We turned loose and the word of God out. You know, people knew, you know. Yeah. It's National Hunt, you know. It didn't say Molnar, but, you know, the word got it. Everybody knew it. And, well, quite frankly, when I walk through, I'm holding the dog.
I was going to say, you're holding the number that's leading, so you know already.
Yeah. And, I mean, I don't know. That whole day, I mean, it felt like it went 12 hours long. I mean, it felt like it was never going to last. And I went to town. I remember texting you and was like, I'm not on Suicide Watch yet. I went to the hotel, and you know, the Skin Up Boys, Skin Up Mafia, Travis Walmsley, they came and got me. We went out to breakfast, got Cracker Barrel, and they were kind of cool. They had all been there. I mean, James Garrett, him and Logan had just made a champion, you know, 2 months before that, you know.
Right.
You know, it's fun. I mean, it's fun how we're all friends and all that, man, but it's very competitive. And, like, this sport, like say for the Skin Up Mafia boys, I'm older than every single one of them boys.
Right.
But when it comes to a foxhound, I look up to every single one of them boys.
Yeah.
Them boys know what they're doing.
Right.
You know, I don't care if you're 60 years old or 20 years old. If you're a houndsman, you're a houndsman.
That's it.
If you're good at it, you're good at it.
That's
you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And well, the only thing I changed different, as a matter of fact, after day 2 at the Southern Classic, that I didn't do after day 1 was I used ice tight, and I wrapped those dog legs. Remember, I remember showing you.
Yep.
And guess who showed me that? Those young boys from Skin Up Mafia. You know what I'm saying? Like, they know what they're doing. And that's the cool thing about, that's just another crazy thing about this sport. You know what I'm saying? It's not like that. You know what I'm saying? Like when we were growing up, you go to the basketball court, the 18-year-old's going to be better than the 14-year-old. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Not like that.
Well, and you mentioned a good thing earlier too. Like, and I was going to come back later on it, but I'll say it now because I think it applies. Asking questions and listening and learning, that right there just proves that especially in this sport, I know it's a life lesson, quote unquote, but in this sport, I don't care how long you've been doing it, you can learn something off of somebody else.
And the crazy thing, like Chris Powell said it in your podcast. You know, Chris. You know, they're awesome. He's always I don't know how many questions he's answered for me. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And, you know, that's the cool thing about this sport. Everybody's out to help everybody.
Yep.
And hell, I remember I got lucky enough to get asked to master a hunt this year. I'm sure we're going to get into that when we get more into the judging aspect of things. But
right.
I got to looking around my house. I was just I was nervous, you know, thinking about it, getting around. We got down to about, I don't know, the night before or 2 nights before I had to go down there. And I got to looking around. I was like, Emily, where's my rule book? I got to looking around. I was like, I got to have a rule book. I'm the master of hounds. I got to have a rule
right.
book.
Right.
Looking around. Well, I couldn't find one. So I messaged Chris Powell on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I was like, do you have any idea where I could like get one online, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, man, they're hard to find, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what this man did? He sat there and he took a picture of every page, front and back, and sent it to me.
Wow.
Right then.
Wow.
And then he was like, here, that's even better than having a book. He was like, now you have an electronic copy of it.
No.
I was like, you know, like that's
going
like
above and beyond
50,
for somebody.
It's 50-some pages, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It wasn't like that took 10 seconds. That took quite a bit of time for him to do that.
Right.
And, you know, it was a thoughtless thing. He didn't think twice about it. He was like, yeah, here you go, bud. You know, let me know if there's anything else. Good luck this weekend. I know you'll do a great job, you know.
Right.
But that's the cool thing about it. It's awesome.
I love it. So, yeah, I'll say let's finish up your third day. That's the fun part.
Yeah, the closer we got to awards, you know, we got back and I'd look up there at the gate and there was no dogs up there. I was like, all right. And he had never quit on me before. I mean, but I was going to talk about that later on too. But that dog was a little older than a lot of people field trials still. I mean, he was almost 4 years old, but that was only his 4th or 5th 3-day in his life, you know?
I remember you talking about that, like at the hunt, like right before we get ready to go, you were like, I'm so worried he's going to quit.
Well, I didn't think he was going to quit necessarily. I just have been there and seen seen what can happen in there. You know what I'm saying? I knew he had finished every 3-day he had ever been in, but he had never been leading one going out either. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? When you look over in that trailing column and there ain't but one dog, every judge in there sees that. Every judge, not saying they're out to get him, but when he comes by, he better have his shit together. He better be doing right.
The old phrase, got a target on his back.
It was a cool thing after the hunt, you know. Of course, people talk or whatever, and a certain judge, I'm not going to say his name, but he did contact me after the hunt. And he said he congratulated me, and he said he was back there in the back near the catch pen.
Right.
And he said it was 9 or 10 dogs laying down at the catch pen. He said it was about 15 minutes left in the hunt. And he said, here came one dog down the road, jogging. And he couldn't tell what dog it was. He said it was silent. There was not a peep going on anywhere around him.
Right.
He said he couldn't tell what dog it was. He said about that time, he said the dog turned sideways and it was 3:15. And he said that was the first time he had seen that dog all day. He had seen it the first 2 days, but he hadn't seen it all day.
Right.
And he said that dog kind of looked over its shoulder and looked at those 9 or 10 dogs laying over there. And he just never even gave up and just kept on galloping. And he was in the road and he went on around and went in that cutover, you know, and he just kept on going.
Yep.
And that's what I like. That's what it takes down there sometimes, you know. And hell, if you want to know the honest truth, one of my dogs was one of the ones laying at the catch pen. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
I mean, but if it had been a different style running, it might have been a different standpoint, you know? I don't know.
See, and I can actually add to that story because when, I may be jumping ahead in your story, but
you caught him.
I think you
caught him day 3.
Yes, I caught him day 3, and that's what I was getting ready to say. I caught him day 3, and when I caught him,
remember he's covered in mud and all that.
Oh my God! But he was still doing work. He was still doing. Mm-hmm. He came out of the emu. Like when I picked him up, he jumped out of the emu. I guess he had been in there hunting. I don't know what he was doing. I was driving down the road, but I just happened to be going down the road, and he jumped out of the emu and in front of me. So I just grabbed him and picked him up. And I remember telling you, like, don't worry, he did not stop. I promise you, he did not stop.
When I tell people all the time, people laugh at me, but I mean, you can ask Demo. Demo's became a very, very good friend of me. Dustin Morris.
Yep.
For those of y'all, he owns Billy Poole's Foxhound Training Preserve. Between him and his dad, there really isn't too many people more than me that put more hours judging in that pen.
Right.
And I tell people all the time, champions are made in that emu cutover.
Yeah.
When every 3 day, when you talk to the man judging that emu cutover, and you ask him what dog he liked, what dog this, what dog that, that's one of the dogs that is going to be up there at the top. You can promise you that.
Yep.
But when it came down to it, the closer we got to awards, the more I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to feel. You had caught him. He had looked good. We got him back up to the kennels. He looked good. I don't know. And we went in there, and it's all a point series. A point system. Some people know it, some people don't.
Right.
Some people get how to keep up with it, some people don't.
Yep.
I'm good with numbers. I got to adding it up in my head, and when Eddie gave it out, he had gave out all the speed and drive scores.
Right.
And then he didn't say anything about trailing.
Yep.
And he had held first place hunting. Well, I had done the math, and Jay White and them, they had over 200 points HGA. So I knew that it had to be there was no way that a dog had won the hunting category, won the endurance category. He could have ended up 11th or something, speed and drive, but there was no way the HGA points were going to add up enough to be first HGA. I was like, the dog has to have a trailing score.
Yep.
Now, of course, my dog could have gotten scratched and another dog could have gotten a trailing score, but that's some chances, you know what I'm saying? I was like, man, this is crazy. Well, when they start calling out that breeding, it's off my dog. Nobody else there has one. I can promise them that. And it was just really cool, man. I don't even really remember it. I kind of blacked out, honestly.
I'm so glad those guys got it on video.
I was about to say a couple good friends got it on video right there, and it's just cool, man. Like we said, everybody's there to win, but then when you win, everybody's there to congratulate you. You know what I'm saying?
And a lot of those, you go to a lot of 3 days, and you get some of the, how do I say this without sounding like cliche or like a tail hole, but you got some of the guys that are like your every hunt they go to, they win or they place or something like that. And they get claps and they get congratulated and stuff like that. But it's when it's the guys that don't win every weekend, that place erupted. I'm telling you, it erupted. When it sounded like we were in a stadium. It gave me chills. It gives me chills even just talking about it. Like, that place erupted when they started calling that breeding out. It was like, it's like a storybook magical moment. It was so cool.
Even Emily says it. I spend, if anybody knows, she does. As much time as I spend at that place, it's like a second home almost.
Right. Right.
Hell, I'm going down there January 20th. I'm gonna be down there to judging the.
Dismal.
I guess that'll be the Dismal Swamp one day.
Yep, I'll be there. Yep, we'll be there together judging. Yep.
But it was cool too. It was amazing how many people that don't have Facebook or.
Yep.
I don't even know how. Excuse me. I don't even know how they really know. I don't even really know how they knew who won the hunt. And all of a sudden, my phone just starts ringing. And I had to set it down. Like, there were so many people that just blew me up. And that's another thing I want to talk about. Like, people always say, oh, you got lucky. You got that trailing score at Billy Pools, man. People that judge there, like, it's a different aspect of the sport. It's not coyote running.
Yep.
It's red fox running. And yeah, you can go down there to Hollywood and you can have all the red fox running you want. Well, it's about 80 to 90 dogs in there.
Right.
Max.
Right.
When you're at Billy Pools and it's 350 dogs on the ground, that red fox, he's got to get it. Yep. And when he knows he's got that many dogs in there, he goes to his hideouts. He goes to his hideouts. Well, then they're going to have to get another piece of game going. There's plenty of game in there. There's game everywhere in there. But they're going to have to trail it up. There's way, way more trailing that goes on in that pen that gets rewarded.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And it's a lot that goes unseen, too.
Situation. It takes a perfect situation to give a trailing score. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I've been lucky enough to give a few in my life. I don't think I've ever given but one. I know I've given one in that pen, maybe more. All I remember really off the top of my head is I gave one there, and I gave one at one of those outside hunts, and then I actually gave one at Hollywood one time in a Masters hunt.
Oh, wow.
That was kind of funny. But that was a good deal. We watched that dog work that fox up. That dog knew where it was.
No.
He knew where he was. He got that fox up. He got it going. Every dog in the pen, it wasn't no running going on right then. Every dog in the pen broke to him, and one of the coolest things about it was that dog made the loop all the way around Hollywood. Was that 400 acres?
400 acres, yeah.
And when the fox came back out in the cutover and us 3, 4, 5 minutes later, that same dog was still leading it.
That's what I'm
that was
talking
cool.
about. That's getting it right there.
Oh yeah, that was Chad Perkins' blacktop dog.
Okay, yeah.
Rock Spring Kennels. And like I said, that dog knew where he was. He knew everything about it, but that was cool. I mean, that's another thing about judging, man. You get to see these dogs work, and you get to we're going to get to talking about judging and why or whatever. I guess that was one of the next things, but I mean, that's the whole point of it.
Yep. So let's roll into that. I mean, that's a good segue.
Yeah.
So, we'll start off kind of with the simply, in it, who got you started in judging? Everybody seems to have somebody that kind of got them involved in judging, and mine was Brad Keefe and Peyton Lucy. So it was those two guys that really helped me along. It showed me a lot. Who was the guys that kind of helped you and get involved in the judging side?
Well, I guess back in the day when it first started, I mean, when we first got to go into these pen hunts, we had them outside style dogs. And my Ironman dog would do pretty decent in the fox pen, but he was never no outstanding, nothing crazy, but he was good. But I didn't know how to train for the pen either, but none of these other dogs were doing anything. They were good dogs, but they just weren't placing.
Right.
And I got tired of it. I mean, I got tired of losing, and I wanted to figure out why these good dogs weren't good enough.
Right.
And so back then, Bubba Wickham still to this day has a pile of hunts, but back then his hunts used to start in about March or April.
Right.
And hell, he'd have hunts all the way. I mean, it was a hunt every weekend. It was 30 hunt club hunts over there. Well, back then, hunts were $25, $30 a dog. This was before Facebook, speed dogs, any of that. It was kind of word of mouth how the hunts went around.
Right.
Well, these guys would call around asking if anybody wanted numbers. Well, I just started asking. I was like, y'all need any more judges? And of course, I mean, still to this day, you call a hunt club, you call a FHA, you ask them if they need judges, they're going to tell you yes.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I started going, and it didn't take me very long. I figured out why we won't win it. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
yep.
But when you talk about, I guess, getting those one days, I remember old Sneaky Pete, Peter Henley, Brandon Anderson, them guys really got me into those hunt club hunts over there. They really helped me out. And I remember judging some great dogs. Like I remember people, when we first got into this sport, Steve Lawson in Fast Five was the ticket. Like, you went to a fox pen and Steve Lawson was there, you start clapping.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right,
like,
right. Who's
going
fighting
to
for
be
second?
up there, and he was probably going to win.
Right.
And I remember people would be hating, like, there's no way, blah, 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 blah. Well, then I started judging, and I would see their dogs. Well, then I would tell those people, you need to come with me next weekend. Instead of bringing your dogs over here and bitching while you're not placing on Sunday morning, you need to be with me on Saturday night, and I'll show you why you're not placing.
Right.
And it raised my bar for the dogs. It raised my bar. Like, yes, we had good dogs, but we needed something a little better. And I got to watch some great dogs. I mean, you talk about any of those dogs, of Steve or Kyle or Peter Henley. I mean, all those guys were on the key back then. I mean, they were tough. But then, I mean, there were some other dogs over there, especially at Wickham's, like that dog of Josh Wright's. He called it Superstar.
Right.
And that was actually a grade dog that had came from Steve Lawson. That Steve, and then when they kind of transferred from the Deerwoods to the pen, it was still some of their grade stock. They had no idea what it went back to, but it was a very good dog.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that just shows to prove that Steve was a houndsman in the Deerwoods, and then he decided to bring up the fox pen field trial as a habit, kind of a hobby, I guess you would say. Not a habit, but it becomes a habit. It's a bad habit, but it becomes it's a hobby, and he just transferred it over.
Yeah.
But it got me into that, and honestly, Glenn Spradlin helped me a whole lot. I remember I don't know what year it was. It was probably 2013, 2014. Glenn took me and Paw to the Maryland State. He had called Missy Windsor. He got numbers to the Maryland State. We went to Billy Pools. And that weekend, Glenn introduced me to Mike Hearns. And I became friends with Mike Hearns. We started going to pools a little bit more. And I became friends with Billy. And I'm not going to say friends with Billy, but Billy knew who I was and I knew who Billy was. I became friends with Mike. And I became, still to this day, pretty good friends with Demo, Dustin. Yep. And I remember I don't even know where I was that day, but it was just one random day. I got a phone call, a number. I didn't even know who it was. I answered it. It was Mike Hearns.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Hey, John," he said, "we're having the Southern Classic Open in November." And this was probably, I don't know, August, September.
Right.
He said, "I'd like for you to come judge it." And I was like, "Mike, I've been judging them one day hunts. I'd always judged our outside hunts down there in Southern Cumberland for Kevin Meadows.
Yeah.
And I judged some hunts at Wickham's and maybe some at Tower Hill, Turpin's Creek. It was still called Captain John's back then.
Right.
But hell, I had never judged no national affiliated 3-day. And I said, "Mike, I love the offer, but that's just not my, I'm not, I don't know if I trust myself to that." He said, "You are crazy as hell, boy." He said, you were more than able to do this." He said, "Come on down here." He said, "How about this?" He said, "The first day you can ride around with me." He said, "We'll figure everything out." He said, "You'll be comfortable." He said, "I'll put you off on your own the second day." And I remember that day, man. I mean, Mike's gone now, and I'll think of that day forever because I learned a lot about judging a dog just in that day. It's crazy how much wisdom he had of the sport and where he had been. It's crazy judging down there. You're all young and ready to run around and act 100 miles an hour. And them old heads like him and Billy Poole would get the most crossings.
Yep.
They're not running anywhere. They can't out. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But they would get them because I remember Mike would say something, and it always reminded me, Mike, because my grandfather still says this to this day, and I thought it was funny. Mike would say, "You get too excited. Calm down, John." I said, "They're coming," because I'd get all hyped up, and I'd end up, maybe you'd overrun it, or maybe, you'd think they're going to come this way, and they go the other way, and you get so down, especially back then because this was when Pools was going through that real rough stage where they were cutting all the timber, and the running wasn't that great. So if you got your chance to get a crossing and you missed it,
oh my gosh. Man. Yep. I know exactly what you're talking about. You kicked yourself in the butt. And I guess that's one thing.
I remember Mike telling me, he was like, "That's how I know you're going to be a good judge one day." He was like, "Because you care." He was like, "Some people miss a crossing and oh well, maybe they'll come back, maybe they won't." Right. I was like, damn, it was like I missed a big buck. You know what I'm saying? Man, I can't believe I just messed up, or I missed the first dog and got the second one. You got to throw the whole thing out. Man, oh, Lord. That's even worse. You'd rather just miss the whole thing. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yep. I'm right there with you. It drives me insane. And I remember those days when the pen, you had, not trying to talk trash about the pen, but you had about an hour and a half, 2 hours of running. And it was like, if you didn't get your crossings then, you might as well just kick yourself and just say, well, I missed it. You may get lucky and get one later, but when you missed it, you missed it. And it always irked me when that happened.
And what you just said, you're not trying to talk trash on the pen. It's nothing against the pen. It was just they were cutting the timber in there, and it's clear cut. It's clear as this living room floor I'm sitting in, and a red fox isn't going to run in that in the daylight.
Yep, that's right.
It's just not happening. A bunch of timber, it is what it is, but it's getting better every day now. I remember when it went from there, I started introducing more people down there. And I remember one of the next 3 days I judged, I reckon it would have been the following year, would have been the Dismal Swamp for Kyle Mabey, Bowie, and I still judge that hunt to this day.
Yep.
And I remember being out there, you used to race the emu cutover. You knew there probably wouldn't be too much running, but you knew you could get out there and get some hunting scores.
Yeah.
And I remember judging a hunt there. This was going to be 2000 and, I don't know, I'm guessing 17 or 18. And I did not get a speed and drive score all 3 days.
Wow.
Well, this year, 2023, first day I judged the second crossroads. I got 33 crossings on the first day.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that shows you the movement. And it's pretty cool how I like seeing the guys that have been there through it all. Now, of course, it's running, so everybody wants to go to Billy Pools.
Right.
Oh, it's running, let's all go. Well, where were y'all at 2 years ago? 5 years ago.
Right. Right.
But I think that place is. We're very fortunate to have that so close to. I heard Mr. Randy Frazier on your podcast was talking about they were thinking about coming up to the Masters. He had always heard great things about it, and
right.
We're so fortunate to have a place like that right here. I mean, as many places as I've been, there's no better facilities. It's no better anything. I mean, push a button and the gate opens for you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, they got food, they got water, they got camper hookups, they got it all right there. And I mean, I don't know.
Yep.
That was a great thing Billy decided to do back in the day. And Lord, has it helped with the fox hunting community. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I had that conversation with a guy, and I'm not going to mention his name or why we were having the conversation, but he messaged me, a couple weeks ago, and he's like, you really do love that place, don't you? Talking about Billy Pools. I said, absolutely. I said, that place will break your heart and make you feel like a champion between weeks. I was like, but, man, it's such a nice facility. Demo is one of the hardest working guys out there as far as taking care of the pen.
People don't realize. I've heard people say they don't realize. Say when I was saying like the Tidewater, I get there 2 days early. He's not expecting nobody to show up. It's 100 degrees in the middle of May.
Right.
When you show up and he's out there cutting grass, he's out there doing something.
Yep.
Well, then we'll say like this year at the Southern Classic Open. You know what I'm saying? I won the hunt. I didn't leave there till almost dark.
Right.
I didn't leave. I stayed late. Guess what he was doing that whole time? He was working.
Yep.
It was a Sunday evening. He'd been working all week, then had this big hunt. There's probably a million things he wanted to do.
Right.
It's the middle of muzzleloader season. The rut is in. He's a hell of a big deer hunter.
Right.
It would have been so easy for him to grab his gun and go get in the cutover somewhere and get up in a tree stand. But no, he had work to do. He had to empty them trash cans. He had to do this. He had to get everything ready. So he knew what he had to do Monday. He didn't want to back himself up. Man, it's amazing. A lot of people think I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Back to like Beach Billy was talking about, hopefully one day they build new fox pens in the state of Virginia. I'm all for it. I will fight for it till the day I die.
Right.
I hope to see it. I don't know if I could ever own one. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of, Demo gets to go on a couple vacations, but Demo doesn't go to no field trials because he's at a field trial every weekend.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. And putting in work.
They got deer hunts. Him and his wife go on some he goes on some vacations in the summertime, they go to the beach and stuff like that. But other than that, he's working on that fox pen.
Yep.
It's flooded right now. He sent me a Snapchat this morning. It's flooded right now. All this rain they done got. Yeah. He might not even get to deer hunt really this week because he's got to work on the wire and stuff,
Man. And you said it earlier.
And even though, it's the off season. It's the off season. There is no off season when you own a fox pen.
Nope.
What I mean? What is he just going to not go over there until February or January and hope that it's the same? No.
Right.
It ain't going to work.
Yep.
That's a very every fox owner or people that lease fox pens in Virginia or anywhere in America, they don't get nowhere near the credit they ought to.
Yeah.
Because judging is a thankless job, but really, I mean, being a pen owner, I mean, them guys, I mean, more people, like we were talking about how the pen used to run or whatever. Well, people act like that was his fault.
Right.
You don't think that man don't want that pen to run good?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And Dean, he's became a very, very, very good friend of mine, and I'm very thankful for him. And he's got it going on down there, man. Anybody listening to this that's thinking about coming to a hunt there this year, you don't know what you're missing out on. And everybody's friendly. It's such a good time, and it's really a true trial for a foxhound.
Yes.
And there is nowhere else that you can really do. That's all that is in this preserve is just foxes, and it changes the game 100% when you do that.
Right.
And it's also, there's nowhere else really that has that many dogs, especially on the inside,
Yep.
You see, like they just had at the Nationals, would they have 600 and some dogs?
Yeah, right.
That's crazy, I couldn't imagine ever going to something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Could you imagine trying to do roll call at that?
Oh, my God, no. Nope. I'd have to consider
that. Might be one. I said earlier, I said earlier where I always like to do roll call. I might try to skip that one.
Yeah, I was gonna say we might have to do an honor system on this one because that's a lot of dogs. I mean, hell, when we do roll call at Billy Pools, we're looking we do it about an hour and a half before cast, so we make sure we got them all and we don't make mistakes.
And I can tell you some of those outside hunts, like when we did it, when I helped at like the New Central, the West Hanover, that can really be a pain because you do the roll call really at cast, and there's no kennels over there, so all the dogs are in trucks, and you gotta get all the. You want to cast right at daylight, so you're doing it in the dark. So everybody's got their spotlights, and people got their notepads, and everybody's trying to help each other. And you get the dogs out. It can be quite a especially the dogs are real ready to go. You know what I'm saying? You're back there opening the dog box, but they're not supposed to go nowhere yet.
Right.
It's crazy.
So
it's fun. It's fun a lot seeing the two different sides of the hunting. Really, the inside and outside. I think that's one of my favorite things of judging.
Yeah.